There's a painting under this painting. Stick around to see how I developed one painting and then made some drastic changes to create this painting. Okay, let's get started. Hello and welcome. This is Betty with Betty Franks Art, and as always, I am excited to have you here today with me to watch how I create on this 48 by 36 inch canvas. It's 48 inches tall by 36 inches wide. If you've been following my videos, then you know that I just love starting with mark making, and this mark making doesn't show up in that final layer or probably even the middle layers by the time I get a whole lot of paint over it. The whole purpose of this initial mark making is for me to just loosen up and connect to the canvas, and also just to get rid of all of that white that is staring back at me, taunting me to do something with it. So by just putting down some marks, I kind of eliminate that, and it eases me into the painting process. Now here I've taken a graphite crayon and I'm just dipping it into my water and creating some marks and drips at the same time. Again, something I just love to do. There's, it's not going to show up in the final piece, but it's just part of my process. And really the whole creation or the whole act of creating, for me, it's all about the process. Everything from these initial marks to my final marks on my final layer to putting on the varnish and wiring it up, it's all part of the process, and there's parts of it that I enjoy more than others, but I really do love all of it. I do enjoy all of it, and I love this beginning part because anything goes. It doesn't matter. No judgment, no worries, just have some fun. Here I went to go clean out that water because it was dirty from a previous session. And then I see here, I believe this is also dried. And because I think I was wearing an apron before, wasn't I? Just a few moments ago. So this might be a different day. I probably just didn't come back to it that same day. Hard to tell because I keep clothing in my studio, and sometimes, I've got dark clothes majority of the time, so sometimes I can't tell if it's the same day or if it's a different day because I've got something else on. But all right, so going into the black, love working with black, and this black in this jar in particular, I have mixed some other colors in with it, so it's not carbon black directly out of the jar. It's actually mixed with some blue and green and maybe some red, I'm not sure. I was trying to add some more depth to the color of black and not have it just the carbon black coming out of the jar. So I keep this on hand. I just mix a whole bunch of it in advance and just keep it handy. And then from here, I go right into adding some white. Now I like to use gesso for my white. Lately I've also been trying to use some titanium white. I'm not sure if I use it in this particular painting, but I did start getting my titanium white out and started using it a little bit more often. Titanium white is a lot more opaque than gesso. I've just learned to use gesso over the years, and people often ask me, why do you use gesso instead of white? And for a couple of reasons. One is back when I was starting out and I was pretty much on a very tight budget, which you could probably relate to, I ended up using gesso as my white because it was much more affordable. And I use a lot of white in my artwork. I would say it's the one that I use the most of. And so I enjoyed using that instead of using titanium white. And I guess I just got used to using it. And I like that it continues to build up some texture as well. Okay, so we are definitely on a different day, and I am just starting this again with mark making because everything is dry, and it's an opportunity for me to just, again, loosen up, reconnect with the canvas, and move forward. So there's my gesso that I squirted out. I use Nova Color gesso, but I'm using a can, or I'm using the bottle from my Liquitex gesso that I used to use, that I used for many years. I love Liquitex gesso, but I love the Nova Color gesso just as well. I didn't see a difference between the two, so I've switched to Nova, and Nova to me is much more affordable, as are all of their paints. So if you're interested, I've got a link down below. If you are using Nova Color paint, leave me a comment below. Let me know what you think about them. I've been using them since 2015 and started off using the really small jars and then switched to the mid-size, the pints, or are they the quarts? No, pints and then quarts. And then I use the gallon size for the gesso since I go through so much of it. Here I decided to go with cool colors. I like to use either warm colors or cool colors when I am creating, and that just helps me to not mix my colors, mix my warm and my cool that will create mud. So this way I can paint wet on wet if I want, and I'm still going to stay in the cool colors, which is the blues and the greens, purples, and then also I throw in yellow with that. Yellow works with either the blues, excuse me, the cools or the warm colors. So here I mixed some of that yellow in with that blue that I'm using, and I'm not sure which blue that is. It kind of looks like ultramarine blue. And when you mix yellow with blue, you're going to get a lovely green that works well together with the blue because you are starting to harmonize colors by mixing them together. And here I just added some more white to that. I think I've got a palette knife in the other hand, so I'm kind of tackling this with two hands. A brush in one hand, in my left hand, which is my non-dominant hand, and then a palette knife in the other. Here I'm just going to use some, I was having a lot of issues with my squirt bottles, so all right, forget that. All you have to do is take a brush and dip it in water and press it down, and then you can get your runs that way, or the drips that way. I did end up finally getting some new squirt bottles, so spray bottles, so that's been helpful to me lately. Now this video is sped up. I think it's at 2.5 times, but I'm still working. I can tell I'm still working fairly quickly through this process, because for me this process is just all about getting marks down, filling in, adding paint to the canvas. I'm not doing too much thinking about the composition at this point, although maybe a little bit. I'm thinking in terms of, do I have some large elements in here? Do I have some medium-sized elements? Do I have some smaller ones? Most of which will end up getting covered up, but it's starting to build a structure for me. I like to flip my brush over and scratch into the surface, or here I'm taking I think that's a palette knife. I'm going too fast. Sometimes I've got a few different objects that I use to scratch into it. One of them is like a really large nail. That is a palette knife now. I can really see it. So I'm just scraping up all the paint on my palette there and using that up. And that way I can let this dry and switch over to some warm colors. There we go. All right, so back, and I may have hit this with the dryer, I'm not sure. And here I'm just kind of, sometimes there's paint stuck on there that's sticking out a little too much, so I like to knock that back. All right, in my hand I've got a China marker that I just peeled back a bit. So I'm making marks again. I'm taking the opportunity. This is still so early on that I can just make marks wherever I want to and not worry about it. Now some of these might show up in the final piece, but probably very little of it. I like adding white at this point because I don't do that at the beginning with the white canvas. The white doesn't show, but once I've got some color down, it's looking good. I can see I'm looking for containers, so that tells me this is probably still the same day, and my palette that's on my table is probably still wet, and I don't want to start introducing, there we go, cleaning out that bucket again, some clean water. So I don't want to introduce some warm colors onto the wet palette that I have on my table. So it looks like I have switched to working out of containers. Got some bright, happy yellow going on there. If you are new to my channel and just watching this video, or your first video on my channel, I just want to say welcome. And if you've been around for a while, which I know some of you folks have, because I always appreciate your comments and your support. So I appreciate you being here with me again and hanging out and watching me create this one. Lots of yellow going on. It's almost a fluorescent yellow from where I'm looking at it right now. It's pretty bright. One of the comments that I got on the last video, or maybe a video before that, was a person was saying how they struggle with naming their pieces. That seems to be the hardest part for them. And I can totally relate to that. I think early on, I was really struggling with that. So what I ended up doing is I started just keeping a list on my phone of words that I would hear that that spoke to me, that I liked, that I ended up using for artwork that I couldn't come up with a name at the moment, or when I'm done, I can't think of a name. So I go to my list of words and potential titles that have really just kind of meant something to me in one way or another, whether I just liked the words, whether I liked them because they relate to the type of art that I like to create, which is my love for fields of flowers. So anything garden themed or around flowers, things like that, I would write those down. And now I might hear them like in a song. I might hear just somebody talking and they say something. It might be from a book that I'm listening to. It might be just a couple of words from a sentence. It might be, let's see, what else? Maybe something that I read, and I just jot these down. The hardest thing is when I'm like in the car and I'm listening to the radio or something, and I hear like several words that sound good together, and then it's hard for me to try to put that on my phone when I'm driving. So that's always a challenge. Then I'm trying to look for paper and a pen to just jot it down. So I have lost the opportunity to write down some things just because I wasn't in a place where I could write it down. But that's my way of being able to always have a list that I can go to. And sometimes, to be honest with you, I'll look at that list and I'll be like, no, none of them are what I'm looking for this particular painting that I just finished. So then I end up having to figure out, okay, well, what am I going to name this? Now, a fun thing to do, and I've done this on occasion, is if I'm really stuck, I will post it and I'll ask my followers on Instagram and Facebook if they have suggestions for a name. And then what I do is the ones that I pick, the names that I pick, those folks, I end up sending them a few of my art postcards so that it's my way of thanking them for coming up with titles that spoke to my heart. So I'm working with a lot of yellow here, and I do recall why I'm working with a lot of yellow, because lately I had been seeing some yellow paintings, and I thought, God, I just love those yellow paintings. I would love to do a yellow painting. And so here I am doing my best trying to do a yellow painting with these blue-green undertones. And I struggled with that. Here I've got my palette knife. Again, I'm kind of just scratching into it. And you can see my hair is blowing all over the place. That's because I've got my fan on. It is California. This was recorded in late August, and so it's pretty warm. So I usually have my fan blowing back behind me. At this point, I think I let that dry enough, come back to it. I do have a chair in my studio where I get to sit and stare at my painting wall and whatever is up on it to see where I want to go next. And I know with this one, I struggled a little bit in the beginning because I couldn't quite get this yellow going, and I really wasn't happy with it. It wasn't the yellow that I was envisioning in my mind. So what I've done is I've put together, oh, it looks like I'm coming in with gray now. I know I come in with a darker color also. Yeah, I'm going with gray. I think gray and yellow looks wonderful together. And I have done a painting, 3 paintings, 3 30 by 30s, and I've got a video on that. If you're interested in that, if you go to my homepage and scroll down a little bit, and you'll see my art on canvas, or actually I renamed that. It's large art. It also includes art on paper that's larger. So if you go to my large art, you'll find it in that playlist. All right, so I'm switching back to some cool colors here. I didn't go to my warm colors, so I'm sticking with the cooler colors. This particular painting, the plan for it was for it to go to Santa Cruz, where there's a gallery in Santa Cruz called Curated by the Sea. And I've got several pieces out there. And this was one of them that went out there, along with 2 36 by 36s and 3 pieces that were originally on paper that I mounted to wood. And those were 24 by 18 each. So 3 of those. So a total of 6 pieces went out there. And so my thought process here was I was thinking, I was trying to get inspiration, and my thought process was, well, Santa Cruz, out by the beach, I thought, well, maybe I'll switch over to more of beachy colors. So, these fun blues, sky blues, some greens, definitely yellows. So I couldn't do a fully yellow painting, fully yellow, so I decided, well, let's just kind of go with more of a beachy theme. So I've got this blue-green that I'm putting on there now, which I love. Love these colors. If you haven't done so already, I would love it if you can give me a thumbs up if you're enjoying this so far, and subscribe to my channel, and then also hit the bell. That way you get notified when I have a new video that I'm uploading. I try to get these uploaded on a regular basis. I wish I could do them every single week. I certainly have enough videos to do it, but taking the time to edit each one and do a voiceover takes time away from doing other stuff, and sometimes I just can't get to it all. Now, I'm loving that lighter color right there, that really light blue, adding a lot of white to the blue that I was using, adding some great values here. So, really light areas and really dark areas, and definitely adding some light areas. So it's slowly coming together. Now, one thing, I got a message from someone who said that they it took them many, many hours for them to watch my last video. And I thought, oh, why is that? And then I read on and she said because she slowed it way down so that she could watch all of my brush strokes and what I was doing. So I try to keep these at right about an hour. I know anybody who is investing an hour of their time watching my videos is truly like I'm so grateful, to folks who are hanging out and sticking it out to the end with me, and for those who are really stretching it out into several hours. Um, but I totally understand if you don't have, all that time to watch me create. We all have priorities and things that we love to do, and watching other artists is a lot of fun because I do it myself, but I know that it can take up a big chunk of your time too. Now, some artists will message me and say that they watch me, or more so listen to me while they're creating, and then, look up on occasion to see what I'm doing. So I guess that's another way to do that. And that leads me into, I've got a earpod or an AirPod in one of my ears because I love to listen to audiobooks or podcasts or just about anything where I'm listening to words being spoken instead of music. I find that I do my best work when I'm just listening to somebody talking, and I'm so engrossed in what they're talking about that I'm not judging what I'm doing. Although here I love the way I tilt my head like, what am I doing here? I'm not really sure. And that happens when I don't, when I'm trying to do something a little bit different, I kind of struggle with that. And I'm sure you have that experience as well. Whenever we try something new, it's challenging. This past weekend, I taught a in-person workshop here in San Jose, California. I had 17 artists for 2 days, and it was a challenge for them. And I know that feeling because I've taken workshops myself where I really struggle and it becomes such a long, exhausting day, both physically, mentally exhausting, trying to learn something new. So I was feeling their pain. So here I'm not trying to learn something new, but I was trying to do something a little bit different, with that yellow. That didn't work out, so decided to go with these kind of beachy colors, which I was kind of liking. It was starting to come together slowly. Don't really like that big yellow area in the middle there. But again, kind of still in the somewhat middle stages of this. I like drips, but then I'd like to clean them up just a little bit so it's not just continuous lines going down the canvas. Back to some of that yellow, that sunshiny yellow. If you're interested in learning to paint in this style of painting that I do, I have a online workshop available. It's from a recorded live session that I did last year, and it's been really popular. It's over 2 hours of recorded time spent with me. I do some exercises with you and then go into creating on 24 by 18-inch paper and talking through my process, answering a ton of questions along the way. And if you are interested, I'm going to include a link down below. You can check that out. And the great thing about that recorded session is it takes you to YouTube with a private link. So you don't have to sign up with any special website to be able to view it. You'll just have access to it directly through YouTube. I like the way these colors are working together. And I did cover up that yellow area right in the center. That Indian yellow, I don't know, I felt like it was too much of it right in the middle. I think just a little bit here and there works so much better. You can follow me on social media if that's a place you like to hang out. I'm over on Instagram and Facebook and also Pinterest. I'd say these colors are very different for me. They're not my usual colors, although watching it here on the video as I'm chatting, I'm kind of liking the colors. I certainly like that really light blue next to the darker blue in that upper left corner, or maybe it's more of a blue-green. So here, doing a lot more stepping back so I can get a better view of it from a distance. I like to look at it and say, okay, well, where does my eye go that I need to work on, that needs fixing, that needs adjusting, whether it be the color or if it needs some marks in that area. Now I do have a variety of different brush sizes in my hand. I like to use, like for this size canvas, I'm usually using like a 12 or 14, but I've got these even smaller ones on with the long-handled that are long-handled brushes that are great for having being a bit looser with it. Now here I'm just offloading whatever is on my brush. I'm making these little marks all over the canvas. And that's one of those things you can't intentionally go in and do. It's much more organic if you're just putting it all over the place and not having much control over it. Kind of like drips, not a whole lot of control over drips, and I always like to have a few things in my artwork that I don't have total control over. All right, so this is kind of looking like it's coming together. I'm just not crazy about those yellow circles over in the upper right area. I feel like that's really standing out a little bit too much. Maybe they needed to be pushed back a bit, so maybe covering up parts of them. Like right there, I did cover up a little bit of that, the upper one, so that it pushes it back and doesn't look like it's kind of floating on top. Let me know in the comments below if you have any ideas about how you come up with titles for your artwork. Is it something that you just look at it and come up with a name, or do you have another way of doing that? And by commenting down below, you're really sharing with everybody else, because I think that's one of those things that a lot of artists struggle with. So other folks will read your comment and you'll be helping them out as well. Okay, so I'm back in the studio. It is another day. I've got something different on, and my gesso got stuck there. Okay, so I am back trying to figure out what I want to do. And okay, so this was at the point where I decided this painting just wasn't working for me. I'm coming in, and I know this because I'm coming in with a whole lot of mark making all over the place, which I would very rarely do at this stage. If I was thinking this was done, or like 90% done, I wouldn't come in and just start scribbling all over the place. But I will if it's a paint over. So I am treating this like a paint over. I'm just making marks everywhere and going to tackle this again. So that first painting there, as I mentioned it at the very beginning of this video, it could have been a painting. I probably could have tweaked just a few things and called it good, but it just wasn't speaking to my heart. I wasn't connecting with it. I wasn't expressing what I wanted to express. And so I decided I'm just going to go at it again. Now, I took a quick picture of it so that we can see where it was and then where I'm headed. So back into the cool colors again. Seems like lately I've been in what I call a happy blue mood. I've been using a lot of blues lately. It's all good. I think we just kind of go through phases. I don't fight it, I just go with it. Switch it out when I'm ready to switch it out. I've added some yellow to that blue that I had on my brush, making a dark green there and then lightening it with some white. So I've got more of a neutral here. Neutrals are great if you're using a lot of bright colors and you want them to stand out even more. Add some neutrals around it and you'll see that those colors will stand out a bit more. Now on this one, you guys already saw what the end result was, so you know that this one didn't have a lot of bright colors to it. In the end, it ended up being more of a softer palette for me. But a very nice palette nonetheless. So I really struggled with this particular painting. In the beginning, I was trying to, I wanted to do a yellow painting. That didn't work. Then I was going for that beachy theme. Well, that didn't work. And now I'm going for something. And where I am in the painting so far, I'm struggling with trying to find a spray bottle that works. I just didn't have one at the time of this recording. There, I'm just wetting my brush again to get drips. And kicking myself for not stopping at the store to buy some spray bottles. So going back to, I was saying, I really struggled with this painting from start to finish. It really kicked my butt, so to speak, but I didn't give up. I just kept going. That's what I love about acrylic paints is, if it's not working, let it dry and go at it again. And the more layers you add, I think the more interest, let some of those previous layers peek through. because they add a lot of interest to the painting. They add a lot of depth and history and story behind the painting. There I'm trying to add a larger element. Not so sure that one survived to the end. But it's all about putting down marks and colors, and one plays off of another. So put down one, see how that works, let it dry, move on to another section, come back to it. It's a lot of give and take, push and pull, and a lot of problem solving. I know I've talked about problem solving in my other videos. Now I've come back in with something I don't like to do, but I covered up all my black. I was looking at it and thinking, there's no dark elements, there's no dark values. So I'm coming back in with black because I've got enough time to help push back some of that black so that it creates the depth that I need. I don't like black, added on the very final layer because it doesn't add depth if you add it to the final layer. It does if you add it to an earlier layer and then you kind of work around it. So a lot of that black that's showing now isn't going to be in the very final piece. But by adding enough of it now, I can pick and choose, what I want to keep for the final piece. Now that blue that I added when I started this again, that blue's really not working at all. It's not harmonizing with everything else. It's really sticking out like a sore thumb. So I end up addressing that. There we go, hit it with the dryer. Want to make sure that some of those areas were dry so that I can move on. Trying to multitask here. I think I've got my rigger out, which is a script brush. Yep, that's what it is. So adding water to it and making some finer marks with it. So like I was saying before, it's all about problem solving, looking at it, trying to figure out what works, what doesn't work. And I know that comes with practice. And I say that because with the workshop that I just taught this past weekend, there were folks who were struggling with, knowing what to do. What do you do next? And that just takes a lot of practice. I've been creating in this style since 2018, a little bit of it in 2017. I went back and looked at some photos, and I don't think I realized I was slowly starting to transition into this style of art back in 2017, kind of late 2017, but I definitely noticed it more so in 2018. And so I kept practicing, and I would do a lot of smaller pieces, so 11 by 14, 9 by 12. I got in a lot of practice. And then when I went to go work larger, I didn't have a whole lot of practice working large. And so I struggled. And I just remember those months of really struggling. And I was in the studio actually when I had first moved into the studio and trying to take what I was looking at on my smaller pieces and trying to get them supersized to these larger pieces. Months and months of practice to get there. And just that feeling of being so frustrated with it, like, why can I do it on this small piece, but I just can't do it on this big piece? And a lot of it had to do with muscle memory. And my muscle memory was working small. So I can, move my hand like just a couple of inches or not a half inch, and I could get all these perfect marks. But working large, we're talking about moving your hand a foot, not an inch. So I had to learn some new muscle memory, or I had to create new muscle memory working large. And that's just one of those things you can't learn overnight. It just takes so much practice. It's something you can't buy. It's something you just got to do. All right, so this one's slowly coming together. Certainly not there yet, but going in the right direction. There's way too much black up there, so that definitely needed covering up. But I think I come back in and add more again, and then I end up covering it up again. So again, it just goes to show that put it down, see what it's like, remove it if it's not working. Now, just now I brought back some larger circles that I had done before. And there's another one up there, but that one up there, I think I end up covering up again. Well, no, looks like maybe I just take it out now. That part of it's still there. So those lower three circles, they all relate to one another, but then you look at that one in the upper right that I just did, it doesn't relate to anything. So it doesn't work with the overall piece. So that's why I end up taking it out. I like to group my marks together so that they relate to one another, so that they work together. If you put one mark in the upper corner and another one in a lower corner, they're not relating to one. To me, they seem too far apart that they don't seem to work together. Hopefully I'm explaining that right. I do find that I don't always have the best words or descriptions to try to describe what I'm doing or what I'm thinking. And that goes to show that some of it is just, going on in our heads, and we can't get it out with words, but we can get it out with paint. Now, another one of my goals lately has been to loosen up and not tighten up too much on my paintings. And so you can see sometimes when the way I'm holding my brush is an indicator of that, where I hold it closer to the end of the brush, the tip of the brush, or the brush handle, I should say, so that I'm staying a bit looser. There, I was trying to get rid of that circle up there, but that's already dry, so I'll come back in and tackle that later. There's another painting I recently did. I believe it's a 48 by 48 that is also in a lot of neutral colors, plus some pops of kind of a reddish orange in it. I'll have that video coming up soon, hopefully in the next month. But I love that one too because of all the neutrals in it, just like this one. This one's got a lot of neutrals in it with a little bit of these blues. I wanted to say a pop of color, but honestly, these blues really are not a pop of color. I think everything is pretty subdued. Those blues that you're seeing right now, I do end up taking those out because they're not harmonizing with the rest of the painting. If you're interested in the art supplies that I like to use, I've got a link down below that will take you to all my favorite art supplies. That includes my mark making tools, like my Neocolor 2s and my Prismacolor pencils, things like that I like to use. You're always welcome to ask me questions below. Always happy to answer any questions you have about my painting or my supplies or my process. One of the other questions that I often get is, how do I get my canvas on my wall? So my painting wall has plastic on it, which you can see because you can see the tape running across the top there. And then what I did was I screwed in long screws into the studs, and then those screws stick out about a ½ inch. And that allows me to just hang my canvas right onto the screws that are sticking out. Now I did that all around my studio space. You can see some of them off to the right there. And that way, whenever I've got artwork that I'm done with, I can hang it up and be able to view it from a distance. So here I'm trying to get two other pieces or two other circles that will relate to that one circle that I did. And now those are a grouping of 3 now seems to make more sense instead of that one that was just hanging out there all by itself. Adding more values here, so some lighter values. Definitely slowing down at this point, trying to think through more of what needs to be done. I'd say I'm probably like about 80% done, maybe a little bit more than that. Much more happier with the way it's looking now. Doing drips over here. Now I love the drips. Now look at the bottom left corner. So I have that light area, and now I've got some nice gray drips going over it. Even though I'm picking up some of it with my rag there, they're still coming down. I can even see them here on this video. They're still dripping down a little bit. And I just love seeing kind of those more subtle drips over a lighter area with some darker drips, or vice versa. So here I can see I added that black back in, and I was shaking my head there just now saying, I don't think that's going to work. So hitting it with my hair dryer so I can dry it quickly and can do something else with it. I wanted to add some darker values in there, but those were just way too dark and it wasn't working with the overall piece. And it really, if you look at it from this distance, it's competing with those dark elements I have more in the center of the canvas. So there we go. We'll take some of that out, maybe just bits and pieces of it showing. Much better. Now my eye can focus more on the darker elements across the center of it. And then I've got some darker elements down at the bottom, those kind of oval shapes that are in a dark gray. I'm going right over those dark gray dots that I did early on. I didn't feel that was working anymore. So here, as I reach the end, I am focused on just cleaning up areas, figuring out what's working and what's not working. I still haven't tackled those blue areas yet, but I will get to that. Sometimes I put down paint and then I lift it up a little bit. I don't take it completely out, I just kind of lighten it. Using my rigger there again. The rigger has the long bristles on it. Love using it. That's a brush that I like to use both on large canvases and even when I'm working really small, like 5 by 7 inch. There's some subtle marks in there too. So adding a variety, it doesn't have to be something that really stands out a lot. It can be a bit softer. All right, so I had some time to think about this. I probably sat down for a bit, maybe ate some lunch, and now there we go. Let's cover up those blue areas because they're just sticking out like a sore thumb to me. So I've got kind of a grayish green going over those and leaving a little bit of that blue showing. So I'm not covering it entirely because I just find it more interesting if a little bit of it is showing. Now looking at that area off to the left, the dark area needs to be tackled as well. It's kind of looking like a messy area. And I know I sprayed it down to get some drips. So I'll go over that area. Here we go. So I'm just cleaning it up. I took a brush that's a smaller brush, a long handle, maybe it's like a 10 or 8, just to clean it up a little bit. And that black that I'm using, again, that's the black that I used at the very beginning that's got a mix of other colors in it. So I'm going to do this throughout the canvas, is just bring back a little bit of those black areas. All right, and one more time. Oh no, actually we're done with the paint. So now I've tried to move you in a little bit closer for the mark making. I know when I'm working this large, mark making is really hard to see. If you're interested in seeing it up close, then check out some of my art that is smaller. So I think if you go to my home page, scroll down a bit, and I think it's labeled under the category of small art. And most of them are working on paper, but some of them are working on cradled wood. So I love working on cradled wood as well. I don't do it for my large pieces because they are so heavy and so difficult to ship, but I love creating on cradled wood for small pieces. Those are simple to ship and so much fun. So this final mark making, I like to just come in and add kind of like the icing on the cake, just a little bit here and there that adds interest when you walk up close to it. You're not going to see this from a distance. It's not that kind of mark making. However, there is a little bit of scribbling that goes on, and hopefully I do it here as well. I can't remember, but I like to, have some areas that are very loose and free and some areas that are very intentional. And I do like to call my final mark making very intentional because it's so different than my mark making at the very beginning. If you are still here and still watching, a huge thank you to you. I so appreciate it. And if you didn't get a chance, give me a thumbs up, please. I really appreciate that so much. And it helps me get this video out to more people. So you're not just helping me, you're helping your fellow creative friends that are out there that you don't even know about, but that they'll get an opportunity to see this because YouTube will send it out to them as well. So the more likes I get on here, the more folks I get to subscribe to my channel, the more opportunity that they will serve it up in other people's feeds. So this piece I ended up titling Boundless. And I don't think it was a title that was on my list of titles. I think it was just something that came to me and I jotted it down right away. And it probably had to do a lot with this whole process that I went through getting this piece to come together. And the other wonderful thing about this piece is it did end up going to Santa Cruz to Curated by the Sea, and it also sold right away. So super excited about that. It went to a couple in Santa Cruz, along with 2 of my 36 by 36 inch pieces. So triple excited to have 3 large pieces in their home, and they really love my style of art, and I am just super honored and excited that they have 3 of my pieces of art in their home. Always brings me so much joy to know that other people love my art as much as I do. All right, so I am signing it. I like to sign in pencil because sometimes I mess up and I erase it. As usual, I like to show you the close-up video of all of the details that you can't see from a distance. So I have slowed down the video to just the standard. I probably should have slowed it down a little bit more. I didn't realize I was going so fast. I have some pictures to show you as well. There's a bit of a side view there. Move it away so you can actually see where it ends. Those are, you can see those blue areas that I covered up. You can still see a little bit of the blue. Just bits and pieces showing through here and there. Lots of juicy detail there. I just love all the depth added to these pieces with all the layers that I've gone through. There's such a history there, or a story to tell. And there's the drips over that lighter area that I loved. So there we go. And I've got, here we go. I'm going to show you a little bit around the room as well. I'd like to give you guys a view of where I work. So coming back around this way. All right, so there it is up on the wall, and those other 2 36 by 36, those 2 went to the same couple. So again, super excited about that. Love the way it looks. It looks so much better when you're looking at it from, with a white wall instead of my painting wall. There's a couple of pieces there that are available. And bringing you around, there's my chair where I like to sit and stare up at my painting wall, contemplating what to do. Okay, here it is. Again, thanks for hanging out with me. I really appreciate you being here. I'm going to show you some of these detail pictures as well. These are a bit slower. I know it's kind of hard when video camera's moving and you're trying to see everything. So here we go. A few more of these. You can see where I scratched into some wet paint as well. There's those drips on the right or the left side there. There's a side view. And again, there it is, just on the white wall, so you can get a better view of it. And me, super happy that it is done and the journey that it's been on. I truly enjoyed all of it. So if you'd like to see some more of my videos, check them out here. Again, you can subscribe here. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. It means so much to me. And wishing you a super fabulous and creative day. All right, take care.